how do you continue to build a culture of committed versus simply compliant?
Well, I think it's hard. I mean, I think it's really
It
hard.
is.
You're
It's super
dealing with
hard.
you're dealing with human beings, but I think that ultimately a lot of it comes down to a couple things. I think first of all, it's all about the players, right? So if you're winning 9 games a year or whatever you're winning, it still comes down to having really good players and having guys that have ability and having guys that have that drive and commitment. So a lot of it for us just starts out with the recruiting process and what and who we recruit, right? So we recruit guys that, have great passion for football and guys that have great character. And I think a lot of it really starts there. And, you know, Jim, with a lot of this stuff that we're talking about, like everything's great in theory, right? Like everybody can
Sure.
talk commitment, everybody can talk about, dedication and persistence and commitment and all these other things. But those slogans that you put up on the wall or on a t-shirt or these things that you're actually, living out. And I think that's the hard part. Like, yeah, I say this all the time when we bring recruits and their parents in. There isn't a coach in America that's going to stand up in front of a group of recruits and say, academics, yeah, we don't really care about academics here. Football, yeah, football's not a priority. Working hard is not a priority. Character is not a priority, but there are very few programs, nationwide that live those values out, every single day. And I think that's the challenge, right? It's like, why is it that, some of Nick Saban's assistants have been, hugely successful and some of them have not had as much success, well, they all have the formula, so to speak, right? They all know, how Coach Saban goes about things, day to day. They all understand his process. They all understand how he recruits. They all understand how he runs, the day to day operations, how he hires coaches, how he manages the staff, how he handles the players, how he runs team meetings, the schematics behind everything. But it's all in the execution. And
Right.
I think that it's a complicated thing. I mean, because when I say it's complicated, I mean it's being able to have that consistency to do it, day after day after day. And there's a lot of components that, that go into this. Some people can look at it and say, well, you're successful at this school and here's the reason why. But the reality is there are multiple layers and multiple reasons why, teams and organizations, are successful. And that's what I'm fascinated by. That's why I love to talk to different people. It's why I love to learn. It's why, like, you mentioned Tony Holler earlier, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for Tony Holler. And some people are like, "Well, you guys are a Feed the Cats football program." I'm like, "We're not necessarily a Feed the Cats football program. We've taken elements, from what Coach Holler does and what he has, preached for the last several years. And there's certain things that we've been able to adapt into our program that have been really successful for us. But then we've taken things from, other coaches as well. I mean, that's been the part that absolutely fascinates me. Like, Connor Hughes up at Army, that the way that guy coaches fundamentals in the weight room is, absolutely tremendous. But there've been other guys that, I've learned a ton from and that I've, woven their philosophies and some of the things that they do into our program. And Jim, one thing I'll tell you is, yeah, I've been doing this now for a while, and 22 years as the head coach here. And man, there's stuff that I did 15 years ago that I'd be embarrassed to tell you. I'm like, man, I can't believe that I did it this way. I can't believe that we practiced that way. I can't believe we did it that way in the weight room. I can't believe that schematically we were, doing that. But it was the best that we knew at that time. And I think the challenges and learning from those experiences and growing and continuing to talk to different people about, best practices. And, I talked to somebody the other day. That I said, "Hey, I'll give you my practice schedules from 3 years ago, but I guarantee you that what we did 3 years ago is not going to be exactly like what we're going to do, this fall." In fact, that's what I'm working on this week. Our coaches are out of the office this week, and I'm working on planning out our entire fall camp. Are there going to be similarities between what we did last year and what we're going to do this year? absolutely. But there are also going to be some different things that we implement. And I've had a couple of, you know, calls and meetings with different coaches that are really, really good and really well versed in some things. And, there's a lot that I've come to learn. And I'm constantly trying to bounce things off other people so that I can, and we can do it better than we've done it in the past.